and support this bill to the House.
The next call is a split call. Jan Logie, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I take a brief call again to express the Green Party's opposition to this bill. And just to correct the previous speaker's assertion that for us our opposition is based on the belief that we think this is too draconian. That is not at the heart of our opposition. The heart of our opposition is that we want our resources going to things that are going to be effective. And we oppose window dressing and political grandstanding at the expense of solutions that we know will work. And we do not support money going towards something that has no evidence base when we desperately need it into treatment and prevention services. So that is at the heart of our opposition. But to this specific bill, I do also just want to recap the process that we've had so far, which also goes to our opposition. So the legislation was initially introduced and sent to the Social Services Committee, who do not have a background in dealing with, or we do not deal with every day, law and order issues. I think it was sent to us because we'd done the inquiry into specialist funding, or funding for specialist sexual violence support services. And we had about 1,000 submissions through that inquiry and considered the range of issues that we needed to consider as a country around addressing sexual violence. This was not anything that was mentioned at all in that process, and that needs to be restated. At the end of that select committee process, the legislation came back to the House and was passed with our opposition. Based on the evidence. And now, about 5 months later, we have legislation that back in this House that extends the initial legislation and also seeks to apparently clarify mistakes that were made in that initial drafting, and I think that is a concern. And we also understand that there's been an SOP for this bill, but have not seen it, that it does not seem to be up on the website, is my understanding, and that again is also a concern for us, that an SOP has been added to a piece of legislation at that stage and not everyone has seen it, and yet we're about to pass this legislation. I want to thank the Minister for taking the chair during the committee stages to answer questions, but we'll point out that there are several questions that still remain unanswered that were asked by this side of the House. So one of them, why is this legislation retrospective? If we've been told that these people that this is now extending to cover were not actually put on a register in the interim, what is the need for the retrospectivity in this legislation? That is an unanswered question. We, to my mind, have not been told why this is needing to pass under urgency. And we asked the very clear question. We also haven't had explained to us how this sentence imposes on a person a non-custodial sentence in respect of a conviction for a qualifying offence is actually any different from the sentence convicts a person of a qualifying offence and imposes a non-custodial sentence in respect of that offence. This bill is seeking to change language that actually none of us have heard any explanation of how it's at all different. So it's a bit worrying that we're passing this under urgency without proper scrutiny and questions remain. We also, that this legislation has a clause in it that says that supposedly clarifies that the date on which a person is charged is irrelevant. Again, I can't see actually how it would have been considered relevant and why that's needed, and we haven't been given examples of that. So these questions remain. They haven't been answered by the Minister, and this House is about to pass a piece of legislation that we have no sense of comfort has been properly thought through. And it, to me, is a real shame that Parliament has wasted time on something that is in effect window dressing and is again passing legislation under urgency with questions, significant questions remaining.
The member mentioned about an SOP that wasn't on the website. It was a tabled amendment, and tabled amendments don't go on the website. So, a call, Kamal Sepuloni, 5 minutes.